Are you ever just whelmed? Hey, it's Allie, and welcome back to the second rewrite of this script. Phase 4 and Thor 4. Hey, those rhyme. Anyway, we're talking about those movies today, and the first version of this script that I had, I pretty much went through the entire movie beginning to end, just recounting it, talking about what I liked and what I didn't like, but I realized I was leaving out a lot of stuff that I didn't like about the movie because a lot of stuff outside of the movie are a lot of my issues with both this movie and Phase 4 as a whole, and also a lot of the stuff that I did like, it was hard to talk about when going like scene for scene through this movie. So I decided to write the script again, and here we are. Firstly, I overall enjoyed this movie. I have a lot of criticisms about it, which, you know, is going to be the entire first part of this video, but overall, I really did like the movie, and I think that it can stand really well on its own, which is both a blessing and a curse for this movie and for Marvel. Secondly, in the first version of the script, I didn't acknowledge enough of the shortcomings, both mentioned by other people and my opinions on them, and my own like ideas and opinions on the shortcomings of this movie and Marvel as a whole at the moment, so I tend to do that in this script. I'm pretty sure I'm one of the like only people who actually like Phase 4 and the potential that Phase 4 has, and I think there's a reason for that, and I intend to talk about that as well in this video. So let's just get into it. If at any time you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe because I make videos like this all the time. Also, you can turn on the bell to get notified every time I drop a video, though it's every Friday. And in the comments below, leave a comment telling me about how you feel about Phase 4. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you like some things? Do you hate some things? Where do you think Marvel needs to go? Where they are at right now? Just let's start a conversation in the comments and let's get into this. So firstly, let's start off with what I didn't like about this movie. The SFX. Okay, I am not the type of person who knows anything about SFX. If you were to give me two different scenes from two different movies and be like, one has good SFX, the other one has bad SFX, if it's not obvious, I'm not gonna know. And I think a lot of normal people, I don't mean normal people. I mean a lot of average people who aren't movie buffs or not in the industry or things like that are not going to understand the like what makes good SFX, what makes good CGI, bad CGI. And that's how you know that if I can notice bad CGI, it's bad. It's really bad. At the beginning of the movie, we see Gore, the main villain of the movie, played by Christian Bale, who's like, it's amazing. It's good. He's a good actor. However, we get to the part where we meet our first god that he kills, and it is so jarring. Like, it immediately takes you out of everything. Like, that moment immediately took me out. Like, I was immersed. I was in it because, you know, the acting was good, the scene, the setup, everything. And then that god comes and starts speaking, and he's moving like a bobblehead. Like, I don't know really how to explain it unless you watch it, but he's moving like his head is moving and his shoulders are moving all differently. And he's like one of those like paper puppets where like each of their joints can move like separately. It's weird. It's very weird, and it's disjointing and uncomfortable to look at. And it's very obvious that it's just not great. And again, I don't know that much about SFX, so the fact that I noticed that it was not that great really had me like, all right, oh, here we go. But after that, I was able to just like turn off my brain again and just watch the movie. So initially, I actually wasn't even going to talk about the SFX because if you didn't know, pretty much the SFX workers for Marvel are, I don't know if they're completely on strike or if they're just very disgruntled. Either way, at the moment, they are not having a good time. They're fighting for, you know, workers' rights. They're fighting for the unfair treatment that they're getting at Marvel. So I wasn't going to bring it up because I was like, well, I don't want to talk about how bad the SFX are if like clearly the SFX people are on strike or something, like, you know. But I feel like it is worth bringing up, number one, to support them, and also to bring up the reason why shit looks like this and the movie feels rushed and is probably rushed is a lot because of the way that Marvel is treating their SFX workers. You're gonna have a movie that is 90% CGI and not give your SFX workers enough time, or VFX, SFX, whatever. SFX is sound effects, does it not? I've been saying SFX this whole time. VFX, whatever. Visual effects. Yeah, that's what I'm so dumb. Anyway, see, I told you I didn't know anything. Anyway, VFX, you're not gonna get your VFX people enough time to, you know, work and to put out a good quality product, especially when 90% of your movie is going to be CGI, is not good. It's not, I think anybody can tell you that that's not fucking good. And so I want to bring it up and I want to talk about it and bring, awareness to it, because I feel like a lot of, average people who go to watch this movie with their kids and their families and whatever, probably, number one, aren't going to notice it that much. And number two, if they do notice it, they're probably just going to be like, oh, the VFX people really dropped the ball. But it's like, it's not their fault. It's Marvel's fault for not treating their workers properly. This movie, we need to let go of the blockbuster format every fucking summer, because it's very clear that as technology gets better and better and better, and these movies rely on CGI and VFX more and more and more, you need to have more time for these movies to be made and to be put out. And that's very clearly what they're not doing, which we will talk about more. But treat your workers fucking properly, Marvel. Like, it's not fucking hard, please. The next thing that I had an issue with is the half-baked storylines, particularly with Gore, who is the main villain of the storyline. To introduce a completely new villain, to have him set up with his motive of the reason why he's doing what he's doing, and then to defeat the villain all in the same movie, it's a lot. And it's not impossible, because that's how things were done way before Marvel movies. You introduce a villain, you give them the motive, and then you do that. But especially when you're trying to have a sympathetic villain like Gore, at least, trying to have a complex and sympathetic somewhat villain, like he's not completely sympathetic, but to have those complexities of the reasoning why he's doing what he's doing with his daughter dying and all that stuff, you need to develop him a lot more. And it's a shame, because I feel like Gore and Christian Bale were really good in this movie, but we didn't get enough of him and enough of his storyline, especially as it relates to his moral compass in killing gods. Thor says at the beginning of the movie, the first god that we see that is dead is, I don't even remember the name, but it's the big spiky like god animal thing that's like on the ground when he goes and meets Sif, I don't remember her name, and he says like, that is one of the nicest gods you'll ever meet, and he's like dead on the ground. And so I just thought to myself, if he's the nicest god you'll ever meet, why is Gore killing him? Like, why would Gore kill him? And then it's like, we don't get that moral conundrum. That would have been really good to see. Like, if he really is a nice and merciful god, Gore coming to kill him would have provided a moral conundrum for him, because it's like, okay, well, this god is really nice and merciful and people love him, so why would you kill him? He's not like all the other gods who aren't merciful, who are horrible, so why would you kill them? And that would be a very good character moment for Gore, to be like, oh, well, maybe not every god is bad, and I have to make that decision now if I constantly need to somehow prove myself right, or the sword that he had, the like necromancer sword, whatever the fuck it was called, is corrupting him. So you could have been like, okay, well, the sword is corrupting him more and more, so he doesn't even care now that it's about his moral compass or whatever. Or on the flip side, it could have been a teaching moment for Thor to be like, maybe this god that he thought was so cool and nice isn't as nice as he thought he was, and Thor could have, like, in that moment start to realize that not every god is good and a lot of these gods are selfish. That could also lead up to the moment with Zeus, which is another issue that I had with like the writing there. I know it was all played out for a joke. Like, in literally one sentence, Thor goes from, oh, I love Zeus, he's my favorite god, he's so cool, blah blah blah, to literally immediately being like, oh, maybe he's not such a great guy. And I know that was a joke, and I liked the joke, I thought it was funny, but at the same time, from a writing standpoint, to have his character do that complete 180 so quickly into just, I don't know, I snapped with my left hand. There we go. To do a complete 180 so quickly, and to like not even ruminate for a couple seconds, like even after the fact, like, okay, everything in the moment, whatever, but on the ship after the fact, I thought that maybe Thor would have a moment to be like, damn, maybe the gods weren't as good and cool and fresh and clean as I thought they were. And like, that is something that we probably should figure out, maybe not in this movie, but maybe in future movies or whatever. But no, it doesn't happen. And so that line is just there, and it's made for a joke, which is fine because I liked the joke, but And I also know that, like, Taika Waititi said that in an interview, that a lot of gore scenes were cut out because of the, like, goriness of the scenes of Gore killing a bunch of gods and torturing them and blah, blah, blah. I think there should have been a way to go around that, though, because I think it's really important to show him having these conversations with the gods and being like, oh, no, you're horrible and I'm here to kill you. And, we're supposed to fear the name God Butcher, but, like, I can't that name means nothing to me as an audience member because I just met this dude. And we only have seen him, we actually haven't seen him kill any gods. We see gods dead, but we do not see him kill any gods. So that name, God Butcher, holds no weight in that moment, at least to me. And I think the entire issue of this movie being PG-13 was very interesting. It is very obviously like very jokey and very kiddie and like not for kids necessarily, but like definitely kids will be the biggest demographic probably who will like this movie. I like this movie, but that's neither here nor there. But I think that issue comes with trying to keep the movie PG-13 and showing as little as much like actual goriness as possible. I think Taika Waititi does a really good job at mixing both humor and like goriness or like morbidness in it. Literally Jojo Rabbit, like a Jojo Rabbit. But I think he kind of had to choose for this movie, and obviously going the safer route with, oh well, this is going to be more funny comedy haha movie, so we can't, you know, I feel like Disney kind of forced his hand and was like, you have to choose. You have to either choose, you know, gore and like violence and stuff, or you can choose comedy. And I feel like that sucks because I feel like Taika Waititi does a really good job at having both in there in his other projects that he's done. So it would have been nice to have both, but you know, it can't really blame Taika or any other cast for that matter for that decision. That decision obviously came from like higher ups, which don't worry, we'll talk about. Anyway, the other thing that I really didn't like about this movie was Jane Foster. If you didn't watch the movie, she has cancer. Yeah, and she dies at the end of the movie. Though that is not my issue. My issue isn't the fact that she had cancer. My issue isn't the fact that she died at the end. Both of those were fine for me. Like, I actually was like, okay, like that. I liked her story arc throughout this. However, the explanations weren't enough for me. Obviously, Natalie Portman did a bang up job playing Jane Foster. She killed that role. I think her and Thor have a really good chemistry, but we'll get to that when I talk about what I liked. But the whole thing with Mjolnir killing her just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. We get this whole little scene, this whole little tender moment, which I really liked this moment, of Thor telling Mjolnir to protect Jane, right? And to like always protect Jane. And that moment was so cute and it was so nice. And then it gets imbued with magic into Mjolnir. And you're like, yeah, okay, like I get that. That's the reason why, you know, Mjolnir chose Jane and to become Mighty Thor. Like that makes sense. Okay, like that's cute. And I like that. Romance. All right, cool. But then you later on in the movie say that Mjolnir is killing her. How does that make sense? How does that make sense that Mjolnir is killing Jane if Mjolnir was supposed to be protecting Jane? It just doesn't make it doesn't make any sense at all. I can't even say a whole lot of sense. It makes no sense. And that was kind of really frustrating. I really liked the idea of, you know, the Mighty Thor, like Jane, like her getting not corrupted with power, but like almost like being addicted to this power because she is sick. But I don't know if this was in the comics or something. If it was in the comics, I don't like that writing either. Because the fact that like Mjolnir is making her more sick doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Also, why? Like there's no explanation of why or how Mjolnir is killing her and making her more sick in the first place. Like the actual thing of like, oh, don't wield it again because it's gonna make you sick, whatever, and you need to be alive in your mortal form to fight off the cancer. And she goes through this whole thing saying like, oh, what, like I need to be alive and living to do what? To sit here and, you know, well, she didn't say all that, but like it was very heavily implied that like that whole thing of like what is living. But they like they literally took a little toothpick and scratched the surface. There was no other like interesting or in-depth analysis of like, okay, yeah, Jane has cancer, but she wants to do more. She very obviously wants to continue her work and be a hero in her own way and all that stuff. But it's like they toothpick scratched the surface and there was nothing else. I think both of these issues that I had with this movie could have been fixed if this was a show. Now, obviously, you can't just fix everything by turning it into a show, but I think specifically with these two plot points, had we had episodic things of like Gore going to dimension, killing gods, and him getting more and more corrupted by this sword and whatever, and then also at the same time having multiple episodes of Jane dealing with, you know, both Mjolnir and her being sick and like all of that stuff, and her like trying to be like, I don't want to, you know, I'd rather be obviously a god than sit here and have cancer, like duh. But like we could have explored more of like, okay, like why does she feel like she would rather be a god than, you know, sit here and fight cancer? And we could talk about humanity and being human and like all that stuff. We could have done that, but like we didn't. We didn't. And I just, it's just really really frustrating because it was just such good potential of a setup of a good plot point in the movie that just never gets explained, and I feel like they just didn't have time to explain it. Genuinely, this movie is the shortest Marvel movie in a while, which says a lot because it's still like 2 hours long, but just like there just wasn't enough. It seemed very rushed and there was not enough time to explain all of the deeper stuff that they wanted to explain in this movie, if that makes sense. Other things that I'm gonna quickly mention that I don't really have a stake in one way or another. Apparently there was something up with the audio in this movie. I didn't notice, and I was sitting in like not a Dolby theater because I didn't see it at AMC. I was sitting at whatever Cinemark's version of a Dolby theater, Cinemark XD or whatever the fuck. Yeah, I was sitting in that theater, which has surround sound, blah blah blah, and I did not notice. Now, literally, I'm a pleb when it comes to this type of stuff, so I'm gonna take everybody else's word for it when they said that. I thought it was just worth bringing up because that, from the technical side standpoint, I cannot notice a lot of things because I am not, a movie maker. I don't know much about from a technical standpoint, from a writing and character standpoint, and that's another story. But from like a technical standpoint, I wouldn't know good audio if it slapped me in the head. I have been struggling with this microphone trying to find good audio. Like, it is so hard. It is so hard. So going to a movie that is made by professionals and trying to be like, oh, that was good audio or bad audio, bitch, as long as it doesn't as long as it doesn't sound like that, bitch, like I really wouldn't notice. Another thing was saying like the action, and that's in relation to the VFX as well. Now that someone has pointed it out to me, I noticed that like in some of these action scenes you can't tell what's going on, and I think that's because of the VFX, and they're trying to hide the like maybe not so great VFX work because it's not finished, so they're trying to like keep cutting camera angle to make it look like there's still a cool fight going on, but we're just gonna keep cutting from angle to angle so you're not looking at the VFX for too long. I think that's pretty obvious. I think you see that the most in both the Shadow Realm fight and the Gold fight, which were probably like the two biggest fights in the movie. Those two fights like were very like cut, and you could like explain it away by being like, okay, well, there's multiple characters in that scene and we need to show all the characters fighting. I actually did like both of those fight scenes though. Crazy. But like now that like someone has pointed it out online and I think back to it, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I couldn't tell you how that fight went because I can tell you how it ended, but I couldn't tell you like how it went and what each character did because it was definitely jumping around a lot to not pay attention to it for that long. But I don't really have a stake in that because again, I don't really know that much about it. So, and once again, I said the average viewer takes their children to go see this movie probably also aren't gonna notice that much. Next, let's talk about what I did like of this movie, and there are actually a pretty good list of things that I did like about this movie. Number one is the character writing. Despite the fact that a lot of the plot points themselves fall flat, I did like a lot of the character writing in this. I liked the whole thing with Jane, Thor, and Gore all being connected by like this kind of like, oh, what it means to live, love, choose love, all that stuff. I really liked that thematic element, and I really liked that. Even though we should have had more time to develop that further, I do like that plot point nonetheless. We gotta talk real quick about Thor's arc through these movies. Thor, love him, and I love the arc through all of these movies. People who are mad that Thor's a himbo, Thor has always been a himbo. He's been a himbo since the first movie, so I don't, even in Thor 1 and 2, he was a himbo in those movies too, so I don't know why people are like, why does he act like this? Like, he's always acted like this. The whole thing people are saying, some people on Tumblr are being like, why hasn't he mourned, the Loki stands, they're like, why hasn't he mourned Loki for longer, blah blah blah. Like, he literally mourned Loki for the last like 2 movies he was in, so I think we're good. Like, I think we're good. Also, the audience is kind of like this thing is like the audience knows Loki's not dead at this point. I mean, if you saw Loki, spoiler alert, Loki's not dead, but like, so it's kind of like seeing him wallow in sorrow for Loki for another entire movie would be like a little bit too much. Would be a lot too much, honestly, in my opinion. So I'm glad that they not kind of forced him to move on, but like allowed him to move on. Like, he didn't need to be a grieving, sobbing mess this entire movie. Like, I think to have him focus on this aspect of his life, and we could deal with that later because Loki is alive. So we could deal with that in an entirely different other movie, show, whatever, of him dealing with his emotional whatever with Loki. This movie was about him and Jane, which I liked a lot. So, shoot me for that. I don't know. Loki stands. Also, fuck Endgame. Fuck Endgame. I know people are like, well, what about his characterization in Endgame? I don't care, because his character in Endgame was fucking trash. And Taika had to undo all of that, like, fucking characterization in the beginning. It was trash. But to talk about the entirety of the beginning of the movie with this whole little training glow up montage thing, and I hate that too. I hated that. But to talk about that, I would have to talk about how much I hate Endgame, which is an entirely different video. Another story for another day. But fuck Endgame. I think that Thor's characterization in this movie and the fact that he goes through a complete arc, beginning to end, is very good. I think that is one of the like pluses in this movie, is the fact that like all characters, for better or worse, go through a arc. Well, all main characters, the three main characters, Gore, Jane, and Thor, they all go through an arc beginning to end. Like I said, with Thor, Gore, and Jane, it could have been fleshed out a lot more, but with Thor, I think it was really well done. Obviously, all of the actors were phenomenal. They have a really good chemistry with each other. I really like Jane and Valkyrie's. Valkyrie? Wrong person. Valkyrie. I really like Jane and Valkyrie's chemistry throughout this movie. I think that it's really fun, even though the fact that they kind of just met each other for the first time. The fact that the both of them are just ready to fight at any given moment, I thought was really funny and really cute, especially with Jane. I thought that was really funny and cute. She really was just like, let me at them. Where are they at? Let me at them. I thought that was really fun. Obviously, the actors. I feel like, though, to a criticism, we should not be, like, letting the actors and some of the writers carry the entirety of Marvel on their backs. Like, I feel like, we can't just leave everything to them and be like, everything else is trash, but the character writing and the characters and the actors are great. I feel like everything should be great, in a perfect world. But, like, obviously, my little gay heart, shout out to Taika. Taika knows how to make anything and everything fucking fruity. So shout out to him. Valk in this movie was great, though I do wish we had more of her and her character. I feel like, especially, it didn't hit, going back to the whole Gore thing. Sorry, I'm not over that. Gore's big moment with the three of them in the little shadow realm, and he's like doing his little monologue, his big monologue. It didn't hit as hard because we didn't have enough time with him, number one. And number two, with Valkyrie, like, in this movie, she has not mentioned one time about anything about her sisters and going into battle or having no faith in gods or, like, whatever. In this movie. Now, maybe in Thor Ragnarok that I'm not remembering, maybe she mentioned, I know she talked about her sisters in that movie, but in terms of, like, having no more faith in the gods or, like, whatever, I can't remember. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But in this movie specifically, she never mentioned it. So it's weird for him to then try and use that as like a weapon against her and be like, oh, you're where with the gods when your sisters were dying. And it's like, yeah, sure, like that could have been a really good moment, but like she didn't have any doubt in her mind, at least in this movie, about it. So it was just kind of like, and I feel like we could have explored her being king and obviously not really liking it all that much a little bit more. Like it was just kind of like a one-off sentence when they were like, oh, are you sure you want to come on this? And she was like, fuck yeah. And it was kind of it, but I wish we could have explored that more. But I still love her. I still love Tessa Thompson and her character. I love her so much. Maybe that's just because I'm gay, though. Obviously, a big thing that Marvel is trying and not trying to do all at the same time is the lore and the multiverse and the elementals, celestials, the celestial beings and stuff like that. Like they're trying and not trying at the same time, which we'll get to when I talk about Marvel as a whole. But they're trying and not trying to have this. But the little bits that we do get of the celestials and the lore of the universe and the world and stuff like that, like the whole thing about the little girl being loved, and she is the celestial being in the comics as well. Like I loved that. I actually really, really loved that. So props to that. Obviously that's just the plot of the movie though, but the lore of all of that I really, really liked and enjoyed that. I enjoyed the visuals of that as well. I thought that was really cool. The little moment where the girl comes out, where he wishes for the girl to come back, Gore wishes for the girl to come back, and she comes back, and like the reflection of the water is her looking like eternity, but she's really this girl, and it looked really fucking cool. It looked really, really cool. So that whole scene, honestly, it looked really fucking cool. Apparently they might have filmed that in a Best Buy parking lot. Y'all, I don't want to know. Genuinely, okay. This movie itself felt really comic booky, especially with the narration at the beginning, middle, and end of the movie. And I thought that was a good thing. I really did, especially because I think that this movie couldn't stand on its own. Like, you can just watch it on its own, which I think is really good. Good and bad, but like, I think overall it is a good thing that this movie can kind of stand on its own. Just like, I would argue that a lot of the movies in this Phase 4, aside from like No Way Home, is is like you can kind of watch it on its own and not have to watch every other Marvel movie that has ever come before it, which I think is good, and I think we should start with that. However, I think 24 Frames of Nick mentioned it in his review video that it seems like, at least for the TV shows, there seems to be an issue with kind of having no ending and like no beginning and ending. But like I'll talk about that when I talk about Marvel. But for the sake of this movie, I really did like that, the fact that there was actually an ending to this movie. Obviously, the post-credit scenes are that thing that connects them to the other movies. But for the most part, you could watch this movie on its own and be like, all right, like that was the story, beginning, middle, and end, despite its shortcomings. I loved the children in this movie. The children were amazing. I love the subtext of the children being like pure love and imagination and whatever. This fight scene where Thor gives them like an extension of his powers and they all fight the little shadow monsters, I think was really cool, because I think the shadow monsters were also created by like Taika's children, I believe. Sorry, my camera stopped recording. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, children. Oh yeah, so the whole theme about children in this movie was really good. I think it also kind of serves as a crutch for this movie, because obviously that is the reasoning that like we can't get more like morbid with it, because I think when you have a lot of children in this movie, especially a Marvel movie, it's going to be more inclined for the children to then go see this movie. So you kind of it's a catch-22 in that way, but I did enjoy the children a lot in this movie. Like I said before, I did like the Shadow Realm fight and the fight in the city of Gold, Omnipotent City, right? The City of the Gods. I really liked that scene. I liked that entire scene because I love the set design and the costume design. The costume design throughout this movie was amazing. Oh, it was so good. I loved it. I loved all the intricacies and the color palette of it all. I really liked the color in this movie and the lack of color in this movie as well, obviously. Like I said, I really liked the gold fight scene, but that really could just be because I'm gay, and seeing Tessa Thompson lick her knife was an experience for me, to say the least. Call me cheesy, call me corny, but I really, really liked the ending. The ending with the whole narration of like, oh, they're love and thunder, and it's like love and thunder because her name is Love and Thor is the god of thunder. It was cute. All right, was it cheesy? Yes. Was it corny? Yes, but it was cute. It was cute, and that honestly made me leave the theater with a smile, because I was like, that was fucking cute. And of course, Love is played by Chris Hemsworth's daughter, so that was even more cute when I figured that. It was cute. It was fucking cute. The ending was really cute. And I don't know what else to say. It was fucking cute. It was really cute. One of the other things that people said they didn't like about this movie were the jokes. However, I love Taika's comedy, so I really enjoyed the jokes, whether they were morbid or whatever. And some people like argued that the jokes kind of took out of like the serious moments, but I like that, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's just me trying to cope with serious moments with humor or like whatever, but I actually really, really like that. Humor is subjective though, so obviously everyone's entitled to their own opinion about it. The goats were annoying though. The goats were annoying. They were very, very fucking annoying. Like, the first scream was funny because it's like, haha, goat scream. Okay, and then the whole thing with them being on the Guardians of the Galaxy's little ship, which was another thing I liked about the movie. The Guardians of the Galaxy cameo at the beginning, I really liked that. I missed them a lot. But the goats, yeah, the goats in the beginning were funny, and then every single time they were on screen, they were screaming. No, like, I was like, why did we make that choice? Because I don't think we needed to. Yeah, I feel like that alone really brought down the age of this movie, and like really was like, oh, this might be like an actual children's movie, because that was very like annoying and grating on my ears. Yeah, I was like, if I wanted to go see screaming and yelling and that type of stuff, I'd go see Minions Next Door. All right, that's not the reason why I came to the theater, okay? Those goats were annoying as hell. And the last thing that I really, really liked about this movie was the New Asgard. I thought I actually really, really liked New Asgard. I liked that it was like a fishing touristy town, and that they're really small. I think it kind of hits home a lot when you really sit down and think about it, how much like Asgard is like gone. Like, they used to be this sprawling city, planet, country, I don't even know, and now like they're literally this small ass fishing town, and like most of them could fit in this like town hall thing. Like, it was really like sad when you thought about it, because that one lady that was like, half of our soldiers are always dead, like, it was a funny joke, but then when you really sit and think about it, it's like pretty much the entire town could fit into New Asgard in that little like city hall thing, and when you really think about it, it's like really sad when you think about it. So I don't know, I like that kind of like, oh damn, like yeah, you're right, half of your soldiers are always dead, damn, I'm so sorry. Overall, I did leave the theater liking the movie, of course, if you don't think too hard about it. The same with Endgame, which is the issue, isn't it? So let's talk about Phase 4 and Marvel as a whole. Overall, Marvel just needs to do better. They need to do way better. I think the collective like feeling about Phase 4 is the kind of like, I can't keep defending you, Marvel type thing, which like, I'm not defending Marvel. I just like things that I like. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, Marvel has done nothing wrong and everything they put out is great. No, I'm criticizing this movie and Marvel right now for a reason. But at the same time, I'm also not gonna like be like, I can't defend Marvel anymore. I've never really sat here and defended Marvel. Like, I like what I like, and that's about it. I'm not gonna sit here and, you know, licking Marvel's boots or anything like that, but you know, for me, I really like Phase 4, and I think that's because of both the acting and the character writing and the overall plots of a lot of these movies and shows that have come out. I've really liked. We're getting to, in my opinion, I feel like we're moving more towards a comic booky type thing, which I think is going to be really hard for Marvel, because obviously they want to lean more into the comic books because that's where they draw literally all of their plots and inspiration from. But at the same time, they have a very big audience that isn't into comic books. Like, there are people who watch Marvel movies, who love Marvel movies, who don't give two flying fucks about comics or any of the characters within comics. So I think because of that, Marvel has a very big commitment issue. You take the whole multiverse thing, for example. That is a very comic book thing. The multiverse, dealing with different universes and characters and whatnot and whatever. That's a very comic book thing. And Marvel needs to choose whether or not they're going to commit to it. We get really cool ideas like the whole omnipotent city and like the gods and there being so many gods and they all exist in peace, and the afterlife stuff in Moon Knight and stuff like that, and the multiverse itself in Multiverse of Madness. But then it all kind of gets just shoved to the side. Like, it gets used as a set piece and then nothing else really happens with it, and it gets kind of thrown to the side and like for the tired Marvel format instead. And that is really frustrating, especially as a person who wants Marvel to commit to this, but they're trying, I think, too hard to hold on to like the casual viewers and the people who just come to watch the spectacle, like the people who literally came to see Endgame without having seen any other Marvel movie. Like, Endgame was a lot of people's first Marvel movie. I don't get it. Especially now looking back on Endgame and how not great it was. Like, Endgame heavily, I'll say this about Endgame real quick. Endgame heavily relies on the fact that you've watched every other Marvel movie that has come before it, and that you love these characters and have an emotional attachment to them. If that's not there, I don't know how people enjoyed that movie. I really, really don't, if you weren't already... I digress. Marvel needs to commit though, and the fact that they're doing this, they're running into. I don't want them to become Star Wars. Now, I love Star Wars, so this is a dig at Star Wars, but also at the same time, like, I love Star Wars. So again, a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But the whole issue with the last trilogy of movies that came out from Star Wars was the fact that Star Wars was trying to hold on to their old audience while also bringing a new audience. And it's like, you just need to commit. People are gonna like Star Wars because it's Star Wars, so they just needed to commit to the new idea and stop trying to hold on to the old idea. And it's the same thing is happening here with Marvel. They need to commit to these new ideas and the multiverse and the comic bookness and all of that stuff, but stop trying to hold on to like the casual fans and the way the popcorn fodder of like Marvel movies and what they have been. They need to let go of that. They need to let go and just go full force, whole hog into this. The reason why like Multiverse of Madness was so decisive on whether people liked it or hated it was because of that. And it's like, well, you're just gonna have to do that. Like, eventually, if you're gonna make this change, you're gonna have to make that change, and you're gonna have to go full force into that change, because you half-ass that change, no one's gonna like it. Like Star Wars, new fans didn't like it, old fans didn't like it, and this is where you're getting up here. You're getting the casual people who just go to watch these movies for the spectacle are starting to not like it anymore, and the people who are comic book fans who really want to root for these movies also aren't gonna like it anymore, because you're not like committing to these new ideas and these cool new ideas. So yeah, Marvel, baby, you got a commitment issue. It's time to go to therapy and figure that one out and make a decision. And while I think Thor Love and Thunder works really well on its own as its own movie in theory, I think in practice, because of how many like plot shortcomings that it had, there wasn't enough. I was gonna say there's too much, but there actually wasn't enough there for it to really stand on its own strongly. I think it was trying. I think whoever, the directors, the writers, whatever, producers, were trying really hard to make this story stand on its own, but because of the shortcomings plot wise, it doesn't. And it has wobbly legs. It doesn't have too many legs to stand on. It has very wobbly legs to stand on. And I think that is why it's both a blessing and a curse that this movie can stand on its own. And lastly, I want to talk about this whole movie blockbuster, summer blockbuster. We need to stop it. It is clearly having a toll on the people who work on this movie. Clearly, you want these movies to be bigger and better every single fucking time. You see the Avatar fucking trailer? Looks like the fucking Unreal 5 engine trailer that they had. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. You know how long it takes to make video games? And even those corporations don't seem to understand how long it takes to make fucking video games. We're getting to that point with movies too. And I think that's fine. I think it's fine to, extend the period of a time that it takes to make a like movie like this, because of how much your movie relies so much on the CGI and the VFX. Why the fuck are you like being like it has to be done in a year? We're shooting and then it has to be done in a year. Babes, that's not viable anymore because of, the thing that happened in the last 2 years of our lives. People don't have that workaholic energy anymore to be doing that. It is not viable anymore to do that, and Marvel needs to stop pretending. Most corporations, honestly, but Marvel specifically, needs to stop thinking that it is. Disney needs to stop thinking that it is. They're just pushing out these movies every single year or multiple times a year, and it's starting to show. The quality of them is starting to show and starting to deteriorate because you're not letting these movies have the time that it needs to sit and render and do whatever the fuck, I don't know, VFX terms, but it needs to, this movie, I think this movie was already delayed once, but it needed to be delayed again. I don't know why the fuck we need the summer blockbuster. No, you don't. People will go see the movie at any time of the year. Why the fuck does it need to be during the summer, babes? Please. Like, I was bummed as fuck when the Spider-Verse 2 got delayed twice, I think now. But I realized, like, really quickly that I don't care that it's been delayed. I'd rather it be delayed and get the amazingness that we got with Spider-Verse 1 than, have it being rushed to be put out and then have a half-assed project. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Like, I'm not the only one that feels this way. Marvel needs to stop doing that because obviously it's taking a toll on its workers. It got to the point where now people are saying, like, Marvel is the worst, like, VFX client to work for. Marvel, they're supposed to be the top of the top. Your movies rely on CGI and VFX, and you're the worst client to work for. Y'all aren't ashamed in any way, shape, or form. Y'all aren't ashamed. Please get it together. I'm begging, because there's so much potential here, and there's so much potential for these shows and these movies, but they're just, Speaking of the shows, like 24 Frames and Nick said in his video about Thor and Marvel as a whole, those shows seemingly don't have ends to them. Which in theory would be like, okay, you're trying to set up like a season 2 or a crossover event, whatever, but the arcs of the story should still end. And thankfully, to an extent with Moon Knight, that happened. Like, Moon Knight is my favorite thing to come out of Phase 4 so far, and that thankfully seemed to happen. But overall, it seemed pretty, like, I agree with that statement that they don't really have a full ending to these shows. Like, the character arcs that these characters go through kind of get put on pause. And I feel the same way about a lot of different shows out right now. Like, namely, I was almost at Supernatural. No, Stranger Things. I feel that way about Stranger Things too. Go watch my Stranger Things video. But, yeah, I agree with that statement that I think, like, they're trying too hard to like make them connect instead of just having them like naturally connect the way they did in the beginning. There's so much potential here, Marvel, and you need to commit. Simply as that. Conclusion. Overall, I did enjoy this movie, and I would go see it again with any of my friends if they wanted to, because characters and story are what drive me to watch a movie and to like a movie more than any technical aspects of it. That's just me though. I did overall like this movie though. However, I have to acknowledge all the shortcomings, both of the movie and Marvel itself lately, for the sake of like everybody involved. Because if you're like me, you probably went and saw this movie and enjoyed it, and then you were like, I'm not gonna think about that too hard. But I think, especially with what's going on in the VFX world and Marvel being horrible clients, I think that we kind of do need to think a little bit deeper about it. you know, it's okay to like something and still be hypercritical about it. Like, I feel that way about a lot of different types of shows and movies. Like, I love the thing, even though I'm so hypercritical about it. And this just happens to fall into that category right now. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this video. You are amazing. I hope you enjoyed me on this little rant. I know it seems like I was very flip-floppy, but I think you can still like a piece of media and be hypercritical about it, like I just said. Anyway, if you want to see me talk about any other Marvel shows, I've talked about Moon Knight, Shang-Chi, like way back. A year now. I think it's been a year since Shang-Chi came out, right? I think that's crazy to think about. Anyway, yeah, I've done that. I talked about other shows like Stranger Things, other movies like the Percy Jackson 2-part series. You should go really watch that. I love those videos. Anyway, you can come meet me on any of my social medias to talk to me about anything Marvel, comic book related, anything. I'm down to talk, especially in the comments below. Leave a comment below. And thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.